In the time it takes to read this sentence, $10 trillion will have crossed the ocean floor, not in armored trucks, but as pulses of light racing through glass fibers thinner than a human hair. These undersea cables carry 99% of international communications, yet a single dragged anchor or a deliberate act of sabotage can erase a nation from the internet in minutes. And with artificial intelligence now demanding an unprecedented flow of data across continents, these fragile threads have become the most critical and vulnerable choke point of the 21st century. Every swipe, every video call, every stock trade depends on a network so fundamental that its existence is barely noticed. These cables carry approximately 99% of international communications and shuttle an estimated $10 trillion in daily financial transactions. Should they go dark, entire nations would be cut off from the global economy in seconds. Yet the world has only just begun to treat them as critical infrastructure. There are no fallback satellites that can handle this flood of data. The cable network is the spinal cord of the internet, and it is terrifyingly singular. Banks, hospitals, government agencies all assume the cables will never fail. But the seabed is a hostile place, and the guardians are few. For decades, telecom firms quietly repaired breaks caused by fishing nets and anchors, never imagining a coordinated attack. But in the age of hybrid warfare, that innocence is gone. A single severed cable can disconnect millions, freeze equity markets, and paralyze emergency services. From a trader in London buying stocks in Tokyo, to a surgeon using a robot in real time across an ocean, everything runs through cables thinner than a garden hose. The pressure on this invisible backbone has never been greater. The story of undersea cables began in 1858, when the first transatlantic telegraph line reduced a message from weeks to hours. A century and a half later, the technology has advanced to hair-thin fiber optics that can stream the world's data in real time. But the means of building this nervous system did not keep pace. Today, an astonishing 99% of all internet traffic passes through cables manufactured by just 3 firms: Alcatel Submarine Networks of France, Insatiable of Japan, and Subcom of the United States. This extreme concentration is the valve, a bottleneck that governs who gets connected and how fast. Recognizing this, in November 2024, the French state acquired 80% of ASN for €100 million, citing strategic national interest. And in March 2026, ASN announced a further €100 million investment to modernize its factories in Calais and Greenwich for next-generation cable production. The same 3 companies now sit at the nexus of a global AI data center gold rush, their order books swelling with demands that didn't exist 5 years ago. The valve is narrow, and the world is rushing through it. History shows that such bottlenecks invite disruption. Most cable faults are, at first glance, accidental. Between 1959 and 2006, fishing trawlers dragging their nets accounted for 44.6% of all damage. Ship anchors snagged another 14.6%. But since 2022, a different pattern has emerged, one of systematic, hybrid warfare. NATO declared in 2025 that the threat level against European infrastructure was at a record high, pointing to a Russian campaign of subversion. The International Institute for Strategic Studies documented over 50 sabotage events from 2022 to mid-2025 that were likely linked to Russia. Then, in November 2024, 2 fiber-optic internet cables in the Baltic Sea were severed within a single weekend, one connecting Finland to Germany, the other linking Sweden to Lithuania. A month later, the S-Link 2 power cable between Finland and Estonia was cut along with nearby telecom cables, triggering blackouts and internet outages across the region. These weren't accidents. They were precision strikes on the nervous system of the European economy. And the EU had seen it coming. As early as December 2022, the European Council explicitly identified undersea critical infrastructure as requiring special attention in the context of Russian hybrid warfare. Yet when the attacks came, the response was slow and fragmented. Accidental breaks and deliberate cuts now blur together, making detection even harder. Each incident exposes the fragility of a system designed for a peacetime that no longer exists. The Baltic, once a quiet lake of cooperation, is now a contested underwater front. And then came the artificial intelligence boom. Training a single advanced model can require moving petabytes of data between continents, data that must travel through these very cables. The global data center industry, already a multi-billion-dollar sector, now directly depends on the subsea fiber grid to interlink its server farms from Virginia to Singapore. This surge is why governments are suddenly treating cable manufacturers like strategic weapons producers. In November 2024, the French state moved to secure domestic control of ASN, buying 80% for €100 million. It was a direct response to the emerging reality that whoever builds the cables controls the AI supply chain. And in March 2026, ASN announced a parallel €100 million investment to retool its Calais and Greenwich factories for the next generation of high-bandwidth cables, engineered specifically to feed the data hunger of AI clusters. The same seabed that once carried Morse code now carries the future of intelligence. But the gold rush has attracted predators. The more dependent we become on these cables, the more tempting a target they present. This hunger is insatiable. Every major cloud provider is planning new transoceanic projects, and the order backlog at the big three manufacturers stretches years into the future. The boom is a pressure cooker of demand and vulnerability. The response is now accelerating. The European Commission's Defence Readiness Roadmap 2030 identifies drone and counter-drone capabilities as a top priority for countering hybrid threats to critical infrastructure, including undersea cables. But the legal patchwork persists. More than 2 years after the EU Council sounded the alarm about Russian hybrid warfare in December 2022, the seabed remains a mosaic of national jurisdictions, commercial contracts, and blind spots. NATO patrols the Baltic, but it cannot watch every meter of cable. The IISS documented over 50 sabotage events between 2022 and mid-2025, most perpetrators remain unidentified. The blunt reality is that a state actor with a civilian vessel and a heavy anchor can still take a nation offline. And as AI data centers multiply, the incentive to strike these digital arteries will only grow. The battleground has moved from land and air to the depths. Securing the cables will require a new kind of arms race, one fought with sensors, drones, and international treaties, yet none of that exists at scale today. The crackdown is just beginning, and the window for preemptive action is narrowing. The undersea cable is no longer just a marvel of engineering buried in silt. It is the contested terrain of the 21st century where a single anchor can trigger a diplomatic crisis, and where AI's hunger for data is redrawing the map of strategic supply chains. The same few companies that built the 19th century telegraph lines now hold the keys to the AI-powered future. As the race to secure the ocean floor intensifies, the next billion-dollar defense contract might not be for a fighter jet, but for a fleet of autonomous underwater drones to patrol the fiber lines that keep our digital world alive. The invisible battle has only just begun.